Geek Tank Radio on 98.1 The Max.
Welcome, everyone. We are the Geek Patrol, and our microphones don't have a stun setting. Today's episode of Geek Tank Radio is brought to you by the Coruscant Mountain Climbing Guild. Allan, can you hand me that 6-foot ladder? I'm going up. I mean, they let anybody into this. Not one of the more challenging feats of physical endurance I've ever had to do, but, you know.
I think it's more of a trial run for the young beginners.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I was looking at it as just a way of making you feel good about yourself.
Right.
So there
hey, you
go.
can say, hey, I made it to the summit.
I climbed Mount Lump.
Yeah, getting past the security is the bigger challenge.
Well, that's true.
Anyway, welcome to Geek Tank Radio, everybody. I'm Joe Thorderson here with my buddy Allan Gilbreth and our pal Max over there behind the glass.
On top of the peak.
Not Brandon Olmsted. We're gonna cut him some slack. Brandon, you know, I don't know if
He's getting a new house.
If
man,
you're new to Geek Tank Radio, poor Brandon. Back in December, we're talking December.
Yeah.
We're 3 months into this thing. He has been out of his home because they had a plumbing disaster. They had the pipes burst in his home. He's been living, I guess, with his grandmother or something, him and his wife, and finally he can move back in this weekend. So we're like, yeah, take the day off, go take care of business. So. And he's getting basically a new place. Would you suffer 3 months of that to get basically a new interior of your home? I think.
Well, yeah.
The trade-off's not bad.
Yeah, he's basically, he hasn't moved, but he got a new house.
Yeah. So Brandon,
it's happening, man. I'm almost envious.
Exactly. So okay, Allan. Later in the show, this is something we barely scratched. We almost never talk about this, and I don't know why. And it's steampunk and. I've got, I don't know if I've got questions. I have observations and things I want to roundtable with you guys. Okay. Allan's somewhat of an authority on steampunk. I mean, for one thing, he lived back then. And also, there are some people that I think they know what steampunk looks like, and I don't know, maybe there's something we could do to enlighten or, you know, and there's things about steampunk I don't understand. So we're gonna hit that later in science. Okay, well, we're 3D printing everything else. Why not rockets?
Rocket.
3D printed rockets. That's
and
where
it flew.
That's where we're. Well, and it worked. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've got some of that, and you know, we've got other interesting things that I'm sure are going to grow organically out of this discussion. That there's no point in even bringing it up because we don't know. I can't over tease. That's sort of one of my shortcomings. But I mean, I don't want to bring this up every week, Allan. But we're in the middle of things. We have to shift to Disney Plus. I mean. As I said, every time I think maybe I'll cancel it and just
the mouse
take a
is
break
not
from
going to let
it.
you go.
No, I mean this is how long has Disney Plus been around? Because I want to. I mean, at least 4 years.
Well,
something like that.
I mean, we began the rumors about 5 years ago, and then it's grown to the point now where we can't imagine life without it.
It's funny because when it came out, I was like, okay, well, they're going to just replay old Disney movies. They're going to show Marvel. They're going to show Star Wars. Well, I have all those on DVD. Why do I need this? You know, and so I thought, well, okay, they talked about this show called The Mandalorian.
Right.
I'll check that out. So I subscribed, and years later, I still haven't given up my subscription.
It had a baby Yoda, and you were done.
Well, here we are, Allan, into season 3 of The Mandalorian. And okay, let's skip. Let's start with something good. The Bad Batch. The only thing I will say is that this is building to an epic crescendo. The Bad Batch. I mean, little cartoon
let's
got more
there.
depth and more emotion than, I mean, and we say it all the time. Don't underestimate these animators.
Whoever of the concept person was behind this, plus the showrunner, plus the voice actors, plus the cartooning, plus all the animation to it.
Right.
You know, this is easily as good as anything live action.
I mean, it's superior in a lot of ways.
Just as entertaining, very well acted, very well voiced, very well drawn. It is just a shining example of where the tech to this particular type of production is these days.
Right.
It's just astounding.
Yeah, it's outstanding, and it's building up to something really, really cool. And if you're on the fence and you're like, I just can't bring myself to watch these cartoons,
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, you can. Trust me. And this is actually not a bad introductor. I believe if you're new to all of the animateds, you could probably just watch this. You don't have to watch Clone Wars or Rebels because
Right.
if you're familiar with the Star Wars story, you're going to be familiar with the era they're living in and just jump in and enjoy it. So, but Allan, okay, I cannot figure out what's going on with the Mandalorian because we universally, I mean, Mandalorian was sort of the crowning jewel of Star Wars in terms of the shows. I mean, everybody was praising it. And I don't know, man. We're 4 episodes in, and I can't. It doesn't even feel like the same show to me at all. And I mean, I'm sorry. There were some parts this week that it was almost embarrassing to watch because it was so badly written. So,
well, you know what? I find it amusing that every season, it's the same complaint on the same number episode.
No,
it's something weird.
This is different.
This is dumb. This is this. This is that. However, there is an evil master plan that is going to bring it all back together because that is just their floor plan.
I don't think so,
halfway through the season, the Mandalorian goes off the rails and then brings it brilliantly back home. And they did some massive fan service and got a brilliant character actor from one of the most hated members of Star Wars to now one of the most beloved.
Yeah, what is his name? Why do I always forget? He played Jar Jar Binks, and he gets to do a cameo as a Jedi. That scene was cool. The scene with where they go to where we're seeing Order 66 being carried out from Baby Yoda's perspective. That was cool, but that was like 3 minutes long. I'm talking. There were some things that were impossible to overlook because they were so bad. And this is episode 4, Allan. I'm sorry. Every episode has been like that for me. They have their moments, but it just doesn't even feel because the seasons 1 and 2, there was just this kind of interesting vibe, and I cared about every character. I had an emotional attachment, and then of course when the climax of season 2 was just awesome, but I don't know, man. I'm not feeling it right now. So.
You will. I was just really happy to see Ahmed Best get a little fan love and get some fan service. And got to play a cool role, and now he's back in the fold.
You know, the thing is with Ahmed Best too, because when he played Jar Jar Binks, he put his heart and soul into this, and he really got harassed for, I mean,
he got submarined for that one,
and it's a real shame. So I'm glad he got to do that. But it's funny because Jar Jar Binks did fulfill his duty. He was a fan favorite with kids, which is what the whole point was. So, all right, hey guys, we're gonna take a quick break, and when we come back, this is gonna be interesting. We're gonna talk all about steampunk.
You're listening to Geek Tank Radio on 98.1 The Max. Allan Gilbraith doesn't need Horcruxes. The Geek Patrol is back.
Yeah, and we don't want to know. It's some secret family recipe, Max. We just do not want to know. I don't know how you pull it off, Allan, but
I just see the hamburger helper, but with like Horcruxes.
In any case, welcome back to Geek Tank Radio, everybody. I'm Joe Thorderson here with my buddy Allan Gilbert, who needs to get himself up off the floor, and our pal Max over there behind
with
the glass.
The evil hamburger helper.
We told you we had new rejoiners coming, Allan. And,
that was awesome.
I knew
Obviously,
you'd like that
I did
one.
not see that coming.
No.
That was awesome.
Brandon Olmstead is off duty this week. Happily so. The poor guy, he's been out of his home for 3 months while they rebuilt after a plumbing disaster. Yeah. So he's getting moved in, but he'll be back next week. So, hey, if you're just tuning in, I did my weekly gripe about The Mandalorian season 3, which I need to move along. I mean, I don't hate it. I'm just disappointed because the bar was set so high. I mean, in the past, it's just really been one of the best shows out there, and I feel like it's suffering this year. It's just not quite
every
at the
third
level
season
of quality.
has a little drag. Everybody's third season drags.
They better get out. Okay,
I have faith. I have absolute faith. We'll be all thrilled and chilled and jumping up and down by the end of it.
So and then later in the show, Allan is gonna in science. We're gonna talk about the 3D printed rocket technology that's emerging. And I say emerging, it's here. and it's being utilized. So that's pretty cool. But, Alan, we do not talk enough on this show about steampunk, which is sort of interesting to me because, okay, I believe most people know steampunk when they see it. However, I think steampunk is sort of, so if you're not familiar with it, folks, it's basically just Google steampunk and you're going to see all sorts of interesting clothing. It's basically Victorian. It's like a Victorian look that if it was, if the technology was, sort of futuristic, I don't know. There's a definite look to steampunk. And so my question, Alan, is I love the aesthetic of steampunk, not just the costumes, but the era. You see these interesting vehicles and these zeppelins and these weapons that they use and everything, and even down to I'm looking for a new lamp for my kitchen, and we might go with a steampunk looking lamp because they're really cool. There's a lot of gears and everything. But what I guess I was wondering is steampunk is mainstream, but it also isn't. I mean, we don't have steampunk. We've had very few steampunk movies, right, Alan? And don't roll your eyes at me. I'm talking about where at the level of like the Marvel Cinematic Universe or something where it's like, okay, this is the steampunk universe. I think what it is I don't know, as somebody that's an outsider, I don't immediately recognize. Well, this movie had a steampunk element or something. I guess I'm just wondering. It's mainstream, but it's also sort of underground at the same time.
Well, all right.
Would you disagree with that?
All right. The easy thing is that it's a historical piece.
Okay.
So you take a look at of Downey Jr.'s Sherlock Holmes.
Okay, I see.
Those were steampunk movies.
Now, was it a steampunk
Those
movie?
were steampunk as good as it gets.
How about Sky Captain World of Tomorrow?
That was
that
a
one was
steampunk.
goofy.
Indiana Jones is a diesel punk.
Or how about Mortal Engines?
Mortal Engines is a post-apocalyptic diesel punk. So what are we actually talking
sorry,
about?
hang on. You said Sherlock Holmes is a steampunk movie. Okay, I see elements when it comes to the tools they were using and just the look of it, but I don't know that you could just say it's I don't know that 50 people looking at that would even. I don't even think one of them would say it's a steampunk movie.
And that's the beauty of it.
Okay, so it's a more subtle, it's more nuanced, maybe. So.
Well, all right. If you're going to I'm going to pick on Mortal Engines for just a minute. Mortal Engines is a post-apocalyptic. Cities are now mobile and out driving around.
Okay.
And they're looking for tech from the past to obliterate their enemies.
Right.
And there's a lot of steampunk elements in the fact that you've got machinery moving and it's visually very, very appealing. All right, what we're going to do with this whole steampunk thing is, all right, let's get the time period. Steampunk technically really begins about 1700.
Oh, I didn't know that.
1700 is when steam technology replaced basic trapped technology. And what I mean by trap technology, when you're in a trap technology, you can't move.
Okay.
Coal doesn't move. Water doesn't move. So if you're grinding wheat, you can't move from the stream. You got to have the wheel. You got to have the stream. You're trapped.
Okay.
Now, here comes a steam engine. So by whatever means you want, you're going to heat this boiler, and that heat and that moving steam can now make something move, can make something spin.
Right.
The moment that happens, you're now mobile.
You've created an engine, basically.
You've created something that can be set up somewhere else at any time.
Okay.
So that brings us the steampunk aesthetic. Now, of course, Victorian.
Why there's a lot of pipes and gears.
There's pipes and gears and moving things.
And copper.
Right, a
and,
lot of copper.
and stuff that looks cool. And the Victorian age is also the age of so much new tech. But it was what we can call basement tech, because you were at home like the mad scientists making stuff, because we had a complete disregard for anything that resembled human safety and or there were no OSHA rules back then, so you could do what you wanted.
The one thing that I know that correct me if I'm wrong, Alan, but isn't sort of the premise also that this basic technology, the steam engines and things, and our new discovery of harnessing electricity, they were taking it to the level of, okay, well, let's imagine if they use that technology to launch a rocket ship or to make airplanes or to make
create
something.
life.
So imagine
Hello, Frankenstein.
Imagine living in the Victorian era in the 1800s but it's an alternate version where you could travel to the moon on these machines. And the aesthetic is very cool from that point of view. Which
And
I
that's
love
correct.
steam. Don't get me wrong. I think it's great.
I got
think
news
it
for you. You
looks
see
cool, man.
steampunk elements all through The Mandalorian.
That's
Trust me, you
interesting.
do. Next, we've said it. You'll see them.
Okay.
Like that big sniper rifle that the Mandalorian used looked very steampunky.
Yeah, and it is cool. I guess my thing is I would like to see a little more of it. So, but maybe Allan could give us some good steampunk reading recommendations as well. So, all right, well, we're going to continue the talk here on Geek Tank Radio. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
You're listening to Geek Tank Radio on 98.1 The Max. Sharknado was an inside job. The Geek Patrol is back.
Oh, yeah.
Allan has a very suspicious look on his face, too. You were involved, weren't you, sir?
I can neither confirm nor deny
I just hear
anything to do with that.
I think the organization is called the SBI, the Shark Bureau of Investigation.
I think it was an inside job. I mean, look at what it did to the world. Anyway, welcome back to Geek Tank Radio, everybody. I'm Joe Thorderson here with my friends Allan Gilbreth and our buddy Max over there behind the glass.
Fighting off the sharks.
Oh, yeah. Brandon is off. And Max, I'm enjoying these new rejoiners.
He's missing the shark action.
Yeah, okay. We're moving from the shark. So, but yeah, we promised new rejoiners, and they're you got quite a catalog, too. We need to just have a show just with the rejoiners. I'm kind of liking those.
Just us reacting, yeah.
Hey, guys, if you're just tuning in, we were discussing the my feelings about the Bad Batch and the Mandalorian, and which the seasons are coming to. They're going to be wrapping up soon, and we'll probably do a more comprehensive discussion. But before the break, we were talking about steampunk, and Allan, I think most people know it if they see it, but I dare say it's interesting because it's very mainstream, but it's also I don't know. I still see an underground quality to it. But I had a question. Growing up, I didn't see any steampunk stuff. When did it actually come about? Like, is there somebody that's like the father or mother of modern steampunk that we would recognize as maybe kicking the movement off, or did it just sort of grow among groups of people, like
steampunk, the genre actually kind of showed up usually in the early 80s.
Yeah, I wondered. I didn't think it was that old.
And,
yeah.
all right, let me rephrase. The phrase showed up. Basically, steampunk was a designation on the shelf at Barnes & Noble or the other bookstores.
Okay.
And that way you kind of knew where, something about
if
the
you had
wild
to categorize it, we're calling it this. So.
And, otherwise, pretty much, guys, it's just science fiction. It's sci-fi. It's historical. It's sci-fi at a time period.
Set in this Victorian era.
But if you think about it, the Victorian era, this really cranked out some amazing stuff. The people of the time, the thinkers of the time, really were totally amazed with. Now we had lights in the houses. We weren't trapped going to bed at dark with the chickens.
Yeah, the electric light changed
we
the
had
world.
gas lighting before then.
Well, that's
so
true.
we had piped in gas lighting that meant you could have a party late into the evening and be well lit.
Right.
You had mining changes. We had coal was becoming the big production of energy. So we were becoming more and more portable, and now we're going to throw in railroads, so now you can get someplace faster. And welcome to all of these things. And the literature of the time, when you think about it, Dracula. You read Dracula?
Yep.
It's a travel log. It's a travel log with a guy in it that bites people.
Yeah. Yep.
Most of the book is a travel log. Mm-hmm. And people just look at me funny when I say that. And I go, no. Go back and really read Dracula. Don't skip through the boring parts. And again, there's a whole thing in there about paprika.
I think that the term that they used back in the day was called epistolary tales.
Yes.
Okay.
And, Victorians produced the Penny Dreadfuls. We had Varney the Vampire, and we had mysteriously cloaked figures, and all of these things were going on.
We had a detective named Sherlock Holmes, and I think, now that you're saying this, Alan, I could see that there are elements of steampunk in Sherlock Holmes, right? Well, especially like you said, the way they did the Robert Downey Jr. Version definitely had steampunk elements.
Sherlock is always writing a white paper on cigar ash, or is experimenting with violin sounds on fruit flies, or he is truly embodying the basement crazy inventor trying to figure something out.
I want to say this because now that you're kind of expanding my mind, Alan, I think there's a movie that you would probably say, in terms of being the most modern and the most, I would say, impactful and the most famous, you could probably argue that the Christopher Nolan movie, The Prestige, was about as steampunk as you can get because, spoiler, folks, I mean, the guy figures out a way to clone human beings instantaneously. There's all sorts of tech involved that we really didn't have in the Victorian era that gets shown in that movie. I mean, would you call that a steampunk?
Oh, well, and look at Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Frankenstein itself was electricity being the spark of life. We didn't, when Frankenstein was written, Mary Shelley could never have understood an AED machine, better known as that thing you yell charge and clear and you jumpstart somebody's heart with. She was really on this idea.
Well, that's true. That was, that's over 200 years ago.
So we're putting a body together and we're activating it with electricity. Right. We have AED machines in every medical facility in the country now that uses what? Electricity to jumpstart you. Jekyll and Hyde was monstrous at the time because how far could the mind go? Where could medicine take us? Welcome to steampunk.
If somebody, because I think at this point you have an easier chance finding literature. So can you give us a couple of recommended books that we need something for the newbie, somebody that would jump in and not be confused? But are there any books or recommendations you'd make for somebody that wants to get into steampunk?
They can pop over to wherever they want to look at it, and they could look at like the real world of Victorian steampunk.
Okay.
There's a really good series called Dreams of Steam. There's Steampunk Bible. So you just basically pop on to wherever you like to buy books, type in steampunk, and you will get a variety of quick lists.
Okay.
But your classics, really honestly, Jekyll and Hyde, The Invisible Man, of Dracula, Frankenstein, those are your ones that are really, really going to show you the world at that time.
And 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, I'd contend.
Jules Verne should be canonized for this. Yes.
Now that you're making
the
me think of it,
patron saint of steampunk.
Okay, so steampunk isn't really new. It's just, I would say the aesthetic, though. I didn't see the goggles and top hats and stuff growing up, but then again, maybe you'd see subtle versions of that in Jules Verne or something like that. So steampunk's cool. I just don't think we give enough love to steampunk on this show.
H.G. Wells, awesome books right there.
Yeah, pretty cool. So, get out there and enjoy some steampunk. And definitely, if you're a cosplayer, you can't do better than that. You can make half the costume yourself.
You look fabulous.
Absolutely. So this is interesting. So, Alan, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back in science, though, we're going to talk all about 3D printed rockets.
You're listening to Geek Tank Radio on 98.1 The Max. If roasting porgs is wrong, then they don't want to be right. The Geek Patrol is back.
I mean, you can boil them, fillet. There's a lot of techniques. You don't have to just roast them.
The last time I cooked them, I couldn't get you to eat it.
A good pork stew will warm your.
I love pork.
Yakitori with I'm a porg or whatever. Yaki porugo. I don't know.
Pork chops, pork steaks. We serve it all here on Geek Tank Radio. Anyway, welcome back.
Soylent porg.
Yeah. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Joe Thorderson here with my friends Allan Gilbreth and our pal Max over there behind the glass.
Feasting on the porg.
Yeah, he really overdoes it with his.
That's okay. I've got one for him though. I've got one I'll cook for him next week because he needs some pork tattooing.
Pork kebab. Okay.
Yeah.
Brandon's off this week. He is finally getting moved back into his home that it got demolished by a plumbing disaster 3 months ago.
Yeah. Bless
been living with his
heart.
mother-in-law or his I don't know who he's living with actually.
Grandma.
I think it was his grandma. So, but he's excited to be moving back in. So that's we're giving him the day off. But Allan, okay, you've got a really interesting story for us. So,
Hail science!
I hope it's interesting.
Oh,
It
it's
sounds
interesting.
An evolution of a story you brought to us in the past.
This is a follow-up of a story of a follow-up of a story of a follow-up of a story.
Yeah. You've been bringing us these stories for years.
So,
but
but
it's
all right,
expanding.
3D printing is no longer a thing. 3D printing
No,
is
it's
now,
no longer a theory.
We started talking about this in whispered tones 15 years ago.
You know what's interesting? Sorry, not to interrupt you, but you know what is interesting about 3D printing? I remember back in the early, we've been doing Geek Tank quite a while, Allan. In the early days of these stories, I would say, hey, Allan, for people that don't know, tell us what 3D printing is. Well, we don't do that anymore because I feel like most people already know what it is. It's that
Half
mainstream.
of the listeners have a 3D printer
Right.
sitting at home on their desk.
That alone says something.
Now,
So,
over in Tool Talk, we've periodically picked on additive creation or additive manufacturing, which is 3D printing on steroids.
oh yeah, they're printing houses.
They
They're
can 3D print a house.
Right.
Well, congratulations. We've talked about this in the past, but it has finally happened. Relativity Space has 3D printed, are you ready? A rocket.
Oh yeah.
34 meters of rocket. 85% of it came out of their additive layering manufacturing facility.
Hold on it. That my math is correct. Isn't that about the size of a 10-story building?
That's 34 meters, baby. You are correct.
That's pretty tall.
That's big.
Okay.
It's big.
Yeah.
100
Holy.
foot tall rocket.
How big was the printer?
Yeah, I mean,
Well, it's the more than one printer. This is actually a series of additive manufacturing devices, basically commercial 3D printers, and they printed everything but the actual electronics
yeah, I mean,
and the vinyl seals.
How about the engine?
Yes,
Really?
the engine was printed.
holy
yes.
cow.
Now we just need an inline 6 for.
Yeah.
So,
Wait, what was the material? I mean, you can't just make a rocket out of plastic. It needs to be
again,
a serious kind of metal and everything.
there's all kinds of carbon fiber, Kevlar, aluminum. Yes, all different types of metals, layers, fabrics.
synthetics.
That's
yeah,
what I was
wow.
gonna. That's what I was
everything.
going to ask is if you could liquefy metal and make it into as an additive for 3D
Well,
printing.
the answer now is yes, sir. You certainly may.
Wow.
So if you can just picture 100 feet of rocket, just it's kind of of one of the best animations that's horribly inaccurate is in The Fifth Element of when they recreate the perfect being. They go back in the little machines showing the animation of remaking her body.
Yeah.
Can you just picture a giant manufacturing point where they roll a frame in it and out the other end comes a rocket?
You mentioned the Fifth Element, and I was just going to ask, now all they need to do is just 3D print the astronauts.
I hate to say it, Max. but,
3D printed food is probably going to be on the way. That's an unrelated story.
or a 3D printed replacement kidney for your
That
body
is
or
also
something.
a related, but a story we'll do another day.
Okay.
This is all about the rocket. They think they can get it down to about 95% 3D printed.
Because
What's the rest of the 5%?
It's going to be stuff
Probably the-
like the actual chips.
Yeah, I
and
mean, some of that you still have.
Right,
to,
right. There's going to be a few things that won't 3D print
or
exactly.
like the fuel.
But this is just terrifyingly great because it's called Terran 1. It was already, and this isn't even theoretical, Joe. I know you like to tell me I'm clickbait when I tell you something's coming. This baby has
you
already
showed
been
me the
printed,
picture, yeah.
done, has been launched.
Was this a test? Like, I mean, this wasn't a manned mission, right?
No, it was not a manned mission.
Okay.
No.
I wouldn't want to be the test pilot.
I would
on this,
not
so,
want to be
yeah.
the first one strapped in it. No.
Right.
The first segment burned perfectly for just over 2.5 minutes. The second stage of this rocket launched. It flew, completed, it made it up, and they've recovered, so they can read and look at and see how it did.
Because part of making space travel, more viable is making it more affordable. And if you're doing commercial and you're doing all sorts of different space travel, that's something you got to solve. And it sounds like a 3D printer. I mean, that's gonna cut down on the labor costs and the manufacturing costs significantly.
I heard a prediction a while back, and I'm not sure if it was by this company or not, but they were literally saying once we get this all dialed in,
right?
Once we've done a few of them, we might be able to make like a rocket a week.
Can you imagine that? So I mean. Jeez, so it sort of creates. There's a lot of questions that emerge out of this.
And is this a little bit more of a environmentally friendly alternative? Because you're literally using a template and just kind of copying, pasting, and printing.
Yeah, and basically, the number one product they use in this is basically aluminum powders and aluminum beads.
Yeah. Okay. Gosh. So and where's this rocket firm with? I mean, what country is this?
Well, they launched out of Cape Canaveral, so they're here in the U.S.
Oh, it's a local one. Okay, so I wonder if they'll share the technology with like Elon Musk and everybody else, or NASA, and
Well, I am sure they will be more than happy to build you a rocket for the low price of insert crazy dollar amount here.
Right. I don't know though. The more competition, it always drops prices. It always makes things better.
It does.
And it gives us more innovation. So
This really brings space really close.
Very cool, man. Well, another thought-provoking and interesting episode of Geek Tank Radio is in the can, but it's time to get out of here. So until next week, we are the Geek Patrol, and I am Joe Thorderson.
I'm Maximilian.
And I'm Allan Gilbreth, daring you to become a mad scientist in your basement and dare to ask, what's next?